now we enter the sort of backwaters of the NL Central. Gosh, that's rude. Way to be rude, but I don't know how else to describe the
Yeah.
Pirates and Reds that we're headed into. But here we go with the Pirates. And I don't think that it makes a lot of sense to debate how well, okay, what's the high watermark for their wins this year? Throw out a number, anybody. What do you think?
Ooh. Could they win 70 games?
Ouch.
They're in a
They're
weak division.
projected for 72. Come on, let's push it north. Let's go. Somebody. It's
No,
an
75.
auction. It's an auction. Somebody
75.
give me 75, 75.
Here's the problem. Here's my
76.
question. Here's my question though. Does Brian Reynolds stay on the team? Because that impacts it. Could they have a nice first half and sell? Are they still in sell piece mode? Or are they in no, we're going to keep our players?
Does it matter what O'Neal Cruz does to Brian Reynolds? Like if O'Neal
Those
Cruz,
are their two best players.
but if O'Neal Cruz becomes Aaron Judge at shortstop, which there's like at least a 10 to 15, maybe even 20% chance he does because he hits the ball as hard as Judge, right? So if you got O'Neal Cruz, you got Aaron Judge at shortstop. Does Brian Reynolds stay?
I think that he stays if they
play
pay
it out?
him.
Yeah,
Right?
that's how jobs work.
That's his main thing, right? I think didn't he say he was open to an extension with the Pirates if they paid him the money? So to me, it's a little less indicative of, what are the other pieces going to do? Because the Pirates do have some nice up and coming pieces. Like it's not easy to be a Pirates fan right now, but at least you can like look out to the horizon and see like, okay, it's coming. But for keeping Brian Reynolds, if they would like to build around him, they're obviously going to have to offer him an extension.
Yeah.
I know, but he's I mean, he's under team control for the 2026. So.
But wasn't he like really put off by what they did offer him?
He was
in negotiations, right?
And the reason we know these things is we know he's unhappy because we know these things, right? Like he wouldn't have been leaked to the press if he was happy. So he's unhappy, and we know this, and that must mean something. So
I mean,
that's why I think like maybe if like you're like, oh my God, I could play next to that guy, maybe I'll just shut up and play till free agency.
I think you need to get paid, and I agree with Katie. I think the future is bright for them. The issue is though. The future's been bright for Pittsburgh many, many times before. It hasn't panned out, right? It seems like every good player in baseball was at one time a Pittsburgh Pirate.
Well, the good news for the Pirates, right?
Well, I feel that as being based in Oakland, near Oakland.
Yeah, like a feeder team. But I think they also have like 5 of the top 100 prospects right now too. In addition to like the guys who are already up, there's like another wave coming. So they're going to be like watchable. It's just
I think they're getting closer and closer. I mean, I see a form. I see something forming that has the potential to be better than like what we're talking about with the Cubs, right? In terms of young players that are good. And I like Brian Hayes a lot. He hits the ball hard. He just hasn't been able to lift it. That we've heard that from other players, but it still can be with that defensive profile that he has. It can still be really good. That's got to be at least as good as Nico Horner, if not a little bit better. O'Neal Cruz has the most upside of any of the two teams between the Pirates and the Cubs. And then you've got a solid everyday guy in Brian Reynolds that's under team contract for a while. And I think Mitch Keller is stepping a little bit into the limelight here. He's now got 6 pitches, averages 96 miles an hour. Yeah, he doesn't have great command, but he does have the pieces to maybe be an ace. And behind him, you've got Roansy Contreras and Luis Ortiz, 2 really exciting young players. Behind him, you got Michael Burrows, who's one of the better pitching prospects in Major League Baseball. So I agree with you that there's like there's a wave cresting now, and there's a little bit of a wave coming behind it. Endy Rodriguez, the guy that just sent down, is a really exciting prospect as a catcher, and it's so nice to have a strong catcher as your prospect, because if you can get offense for that position and it's cheap and he's a really good game caller and everything, sort of brings everything together. And then some people think their best prospect is Termarr Johnson. Termarr Johnson? Yeah, that's it. Termarr Johnson, who's there's a little bit divisive because he's not a big guy. He's kind of a little guy. He's kind of a second baseman. People are like, is there power there? How can that be your best prospect? I think Endy Rodriguez is their best prospect. So we've got all these players together. So if I'm not going to auction you guys to anything higher than 76 wins this year, when do they cross over into over 500? When is their ETA? When do you think they kind of put this together?
I think it also depends on the teams in their division. We've talked about it. This NL Central is not competitive. It's like the Cardinals and Brewers every single year. The Cardinals have a big problem on their hands in that they only have one pitcher signed after 2023 currently, and that's Steven Matz. You can't roll out Steven Matz every single day. So
you can't even do it every 5 days. I'm sorry.
You couldn't. It depends, right? We're going to get to the Reds. The Reds are rising up too. I mean, it's going to be a little bit for them, but what are the Brewers going to look like in 2025? What are the Cubs going to look like? The Cardinals have never really historically tanked, but I think you're seeing the peak Cardinals right now. So I would guess a good estimate of contention for the Pirates when you look at their upcoming minor league talent, their prospect, their farm system, I would say end of 2024, early 2025, but that window can be extended or accelerated based on their competition in the division.
Yeah, and it's also going to come down to ownership too, because these teams can build from within and build from within and build from within. You still need those one or two pieces on the free agent market. And, is Pittsburgh going to go out and do that? Now, we didn't mention that they got Andrew McCutchen back, which is a big fan favorite. So I don't know if they're trying to, get butts in the seats, sell more tickets with someone like that. But, I do think they're going to need to be active in free agency at some point in time. I mean, are they going to go on this crazy spending spree? Probably not, based on what we know historically from that ownership group. But you still have to go out and supplement, right? You can grow all these prospects.
Wait. What? They did, though.
What was their big
Ji-Man Choi, Carlos Santana. No, I know. I'm being a little bit facetious.
Okay. I do like your point about Mitch Keller, because I think if you look at his body of work last year, you're like, God, this guy really struggled. But honestly, he really turned it around. He had a pretty miserable start to the season. But if you look more closely at those numbers, parceled out, he actually finished really strong. So I think that's really encouraging for them. I think they're on the up and up. It wouldn't shock me if they make the postseason before the Cubs do, because I kind of think they're cresting up. And if they do add the right pieces, maybe they stumble in, like Katie said, maybe they're a wild card team with the extra postseason teams by next year, right? It wouldn't be that crazy. I think betting on the youth, as long as their development is okay, that's going to be the huge part of these rebuilds, whether they work or don't work. Is, are these guys going to be developed at the big league level? Are they going to get better? Or are they just going to be these flashy prospects that they trade away because they aren't able to kind of do anything with them, right? That's going to be, to me, the big test with the Pirates. But I agree with Katie on the timeline. I think it could come sooner rather than later. And in some aspects, I think they're better off than some other teams in the division, like Chicago.
Yeah, I think it's tough to figure it all out. I think the one thing that I like about those, and we were kind of joking. I was just joking with you. I just, I
was what did I miss when I was on maternity leave?
No, but what I like about them is, there's lefties that hit into the shift, Choi and Santana. So there's a little minor bet there that they'll be better without the shift rules. And, Kutch, from all accounts, decided to take the same deal that he could have gotten somewhere with more of a contender to come home. So that's a bit of a homecoming. But none of those guys are going to stand in the way of anybody for long if somebody steps up. You know what I mean? They didn't hand $177 million to a shortstop and then have to sort of figure out where he goes. Like, what if they decide next year that Dansby Swanson is not the shortstop and they're not sure Nico Horner is the shortstop either? Do they have to go sign another shortstop? You know what I mean? Like there's a little bit more. What the Cubs did blocks a little bit more than what the Pirates did, which is the Pirates are still ready for business. If Jack Suwinski comes up and is great, then they can find room for him. Andrew McCutchen's not going to stop him. Maybe Kutch goes to DH and they release Santana. I mean, that's on the table, right? All these guys are on 1-year deals. Ji-Man Choi was, that's the guy they can release, or the phantom DL is always there for guys at the end of their careers. So, I think that, this team is just sort of waiting for maybe one or two more pieces. And I think when I just look at this team, it's all on Cruz. And I know that no team is one player, but when you've got someone with this much upside, if he's just okay, it just changes the whole trajectory of the team. I think I think if there's one person in baseball that I'm watching this year that I think could change the trajectory of an entire franchise, Am I being crazy? Am I like going over the top on this? This sounds to me a little bit like the sort of hot takes that you hear on the radio and stuff. Yeah,
you're being a little crazy because there's this guy named Mike Trout who plays in.
Oh God, that you just cut me in pieces. One name. That's a good point.
Who has and also he's joined by this other pretty good player whose name is Shohei Ohtani.
That's true. Well, which is why we talk about depth and player development on our show, right?
Like it's not like, hey, let's sign LeBron. This isn't the NBA, right? This isn't the NFL where it's like we have a quarterback, we have a chance.
Yeah,
I agree with you that he's an exciting player, but you might be a little strong with him changing the trajectory of the entire thing. Because if Trout and Ohtani can't get the Angels to the playoffs.
In any of your sort of late August half asleep games, Katie, did you catch any younger Pirates that you were excited about other than Oneil Cruz?
No. And look, in all fairness, the last time I saw the Pirates, the Cardinals played them 6 straight times, 3 in St. Louis, 3 in Pittsburgh to end the season. The Cardinals had already clinched, and it was a very much mail it in week for both teams. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to judge any of the talent there from what I saw at the last week. But I will go back to my previous point that I do think they're on the rise. They have a ton of talent. Oneil Cruz he's really impressed me. And I mean, I see him a lot. I won't see him as much this season with the division for the schedule changing, but he is someone that if I see batting and I'm at sports bar or something and he's up to the plate, I'm like, stop, let's watch this. So Pirates do have that going for him. And also, who doesn't like a good feel-good story? Andrew McCutchen going back to where it all started. That was honestly, even though it's not going to change anything in the standings, probably my favorite signing of the offseason.
Yeah, and he's been. I was in Bradenton for a little bit, and it was loud. They love him, and in fact, did you see? They caused him a batter's infraction. Because they were basically doing a standing ovation, and he was kind of like, yeah, and then the umpire and the catcher were standing up and didn't look ready either. But the umpire's like, ball 1. You didn't get
oh my gosh, the Cardinals are in trouble. I just put 2 and 2 together with all those standing ovations they get. They're in trouble.
Yeah, you gotta be careful, and the catcher can deke you out. The catcher can be like, it doesn't have to be in his stance, and if the umpire looks like he's enjoying it, he's counting, he's looking at the clock. So that is something to think about.